Manhattan Neighborhood Network, in partnership with the League of Women Voters of New York State, presents Race to Represent, a MNN election initiative. Manhattan Neighborhood Network, in partnership with the League of Women Voters of New York State, presents Race to Represent, a MNN election initiative. Hello, I'm Julie Walker. New Yorkers will be voting in the general election on Tuesday, November 6th. They'll cast their ballots for offices including governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, comptroller, state senate, and state assembly. Today we bring you a debate with the candidates running for state assembly in District 76. The winner will take office in January of 2019. The New York State Assembly works alongside the state senate and the governor to create laws and establish a state budget. The 76th district includes portions of the Upper East Side, Roosevelt Island, and Yorkville in Manhattan. Joining us today is Democrat candidate and incumbent Rebecca Seawright and her Reform Party challenger, Lou Puliafito. We're going to start off with a lightning round, and we're going to start with the incumbent. Assemblymember Rebecca Seawright, what 3 words would you use to describe yourself that identify you as the better candidate?
I would describe myself with the following 3 words: advocate, activist, and accomplished, because we've accomplished a lot for the Upper East Side and Roosevelt Island, and it's a AAA rating for our constituents on the Upper East Side and Roosevelt Island. Thank you.
And now to your opponent, same question. What 3 words would you use to describe yourself that identify you as the better candidate? Lou Puliafito?
Hi. Basically, loving, leader, and integrity.
Okay, let's stay with you for this next question. What makes you the right choice over your opponent?
Well, basically, I'm an average person that lives an everyday life with everybody else, and I'm just fed up with how things are going, and we need to get our government to work for the people again. And I'm a better choice because I will go and fight the corruption that's in Albany in City Hall and fight the developers for housing in our neighborhood.
Ms. Seawright, what makes you the better candidate?
I've passed over 27 pieces of legislation that I've been the lead sponsor on, and hosted over 50 forums in our community office. We reopened a shuttered office on York Avenue and 79th Street right next to the post office. And I'm a fighter in Albany. I sought and obtained $7 million to bring back to the district for our local parks, our public schools, and our community-based organizations. And so I want to continue to fight for the community, for our neighbors that live on the Upper East Side and Roosevelt Island.
Mr. Puliafito, you'll have a chance to actually talk to us again in a moment. Let me just move on to the next question, because this might be what we're looking for. The district includes Roosevelt Island with parts of the Upper East Side and Yorkville. So what are the 3 biggest issues facing District 76? And we'll go first to you, Mr. Puliafito.
Well, I feel the basic issue in any neighborhood is housing. The developers have the politicians, I'm not saying Rebecca, in their pockets. And what we need to do is we have to rezone the area, all right? And we have to somehow put a tax on people who are not residents of the city. And secondly is we have to do something in housing court, because I'm in housing court right now with my 88-year-old mother-in-law because they want to evict her. And if it's really unfair, and what I think what we need to do in housing court is like they do in divorce court, is to make the financials fair. Because when you're in divorce court, they allow whoever has less money to be made up adequate to the other party. So the landlords should pay for the eviction, pay for the lawyers for the person who's being evicted if they can't afford it. And I think that'll create a level playing field, and there'll be less evictions, or I should say nonsense evictions. I understand there's other reasons, but we need to say, you know what? We need to keep things level at least in housing court, and then maybe expand it throughout the other courts.
Assemblymember Seawright, what are the 3 biggest issues facing your district?
So when I talk to constituents around the Upper East Side and Roosevelt Island, I hear constantly the #1 issue is affordable housing. And twice a month, we host a free housing clinic in our community office on the Upper East Side with a pro bono attorney to help people with their housing issues. And constantly, as I traverse around the district, I'm hearing from people that they're scared. Their landlords are harassing them. Recently on Roosevelt Island, the Westview building came out of the Mitchell-Lama program, and we visited tenants in their apartments and held this free housing clinic and met with the DHCR commissioner to try to help them and hold this affordability plan accountable. So it represented not only the tenants that were looking to continue to rent their apartments, but also to purchase their apartments. The second issue is transportation. Many of our senior citizens depend on the M31 bus to get to their doctor's appointments. And so we need a transportation system, buses and subways that are accountable to the people and that are on time. And the third issue in my district would be public education. We have some of the finest public schools on the Upper East Side, but we need additional resources. And there's a fourth issue, and that's public safety. We have a real issue with senior citizens being targeted with consumer fraud scams, and we need additional support with our public safety issues with our bicycle enforcement. We're hearing often that people are hit in the bicycle lanes, so we need education about the bicycle lanes and we need enforcement on our public safety. We're very fortunate to have the 19th precinct. I'm hosting a crime prevention forum in early December. I hosted one last year. We have a jewel in the 19th precinct, but we need more enforcement with the bicycle lanes and more education.
We're going to get to some of these topics a little later in the debate, but let's stick with affordable housing for now, because that's a topic that so many people can relate to. We'll stay with you first, and then we'll go back to your opponent. What steps will you take to increase the number of affordable housing units in your district?
The rent regulation laws come up are expiring in June of 2019, and so in the next legislative session, it's critical that we have an assembly member that's going to stand up for stronger rent regulation laws and protections. And I've been very fortunate to obtain over $7 million that I've brought back to the district and regularly host twice a month in our community office right there on York Avenue and 79th Street a free housing clinic with a pro bono attorney. And as we service constituents, we're constantly hearing they're being harassed by their landlords, they're being threatened with eviction. And so we created this housing clinic in the district office to help constituents that are being threatened to know what their rights are. And it's critical as we go back to Albany for the session in January that we stand up for strong laws that protect tenant as our rent regulation laws expire next year.
Mr. Puliafito, same question. What would you do to increase the number of affordable housing units?
Well, first the thing is that I don't like the word affordable, because to me that connotates segregation by income. I think we need diversified neighborhoods. And what we need to do is rezone. Second thing is we need to tax either by people who don't have the primary residence here, or the corporations that are buying this, because we have a lot of foreign investment coming in. And I don't blame people to invest in New York. But you know what happens? I was born and raised on the Upper East Side in Yorkville. And you know what? My son has to live in Staten Island. All right? And where are my grandchildren going to live? Out in Pennsylvania? Where? They're not going to be in the city. We need to slow down development and think wisely about that. And I'm no stranger to housing court. I've been there over the years. I've been there with 3 landlords. I know how they are, and we need to push back and we need to fight more. I commend her for what she's trying for, but she has to do more. I mean, the regulations have to be overhauled. DHCR and HPD have to work hand in hand. And in fact, I have an inspector coming to my mother-in-law's apartment shortly. Thank you.
Mr. Puliafito, let's stay with you for a moment. New York State has a $168 billion budget. What accomplishments can you point to that show that you are the candidate that is able to deal with budgets this size? And what, in general, professional accomplishments best demonstrate your ability to hold this office?
Okay, basically, you're asking for my work experience. And what I'm saying to you is I've been in corporate America for 25 years, and all with top 100 Fortune companies. And in fact, I believe that the companies I've been with are in the top 3 of each industry. And I've been groomed to manage, to lead, to balance budgets, make sure things get done on time. And now what we need to do in Albany and City Hall is the corruption. Because if we take away the corruption tax, which I think an easy $16 billion would be returned to everyone through maybe tax relief or maybe more social programs to do. But if we end the corruption and manage better and lead the state and the city the way it should be, I think what the savings will be lesser taxes and more social programs and sure-up programs.
Where would you like to see this money go?
The state budget is almost a $170 billion budget, and I would like to see more funding for senior citizens on the Upper East Side and for affordable housing to help our homelessness issue. I was very proud and honored to be the lead sponsor of the Equal Rights Amendment last legislative session. We need the Equal Rights Amendment in the New York State Constitution, and I also passed a 3D mammogram bill that requires 3D mammograms to be provided for consumers without a copay or deductible paid for by the insurance. And I think that given the national climate, we need more legislation at the state level, like the DREAM Act, helping our immigrants, and codifying Roe versus Wade into the state legislation.
You mentioned codifying Roe versus Wade. You're for it, and just quickly, Mr. Puliafito, are you for the state codifying?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So let's move on to seniors, because that's something that...
Can I just say one
Yes.
thing about it? I do. But what I'm trying to say is a personal issue, and there's a lot of emotions and things that go beyond it. It's not just a cut and dry, okay, let's allow it. We also have to support and educate both the men and the women before they have a pregnancy, and then during and after. We have to have a full support around this. It's not just a simple decision, let me get an abortion or not. And you know what? It's not me, it's not for the state to tell, it's the individual person, the woman, to have that. But I think everything involved with this, because I have 3 grandchildren, and you know what? I can't see nothing more than having more. But you know what? I understand it's a personal decision. And all I want to do is make sure everybody has the facts, the knowledge to make the right decisions. Because once the abortion is done, it's done. Thank you.
So, but you're still saying that you would codify?
Yes, it's
Okay.
a personal decision. And it's
Okay.
not for me or anybody to tell them not to have it.
Okay. Did you want to respond, Assemblymember Seawright?
You know, the choice decision is a very personal decision, and it's about expanding women's rights. There was a time when a woman couldn't get a credit card in her own name, and a woman was forced to play half-court basketball. And so I see the choice decision as expanding women's rights. A woman should have control over her own body. And I am a proud co-sponsor of the Reproductive Health Act in the New York State Assembly, and will continue to fight for taking abortion out of the criminal code in New York State and giving women and families the right to choice, because a woman should have control over her own body.
I want to go back to seniors. Right now, there are 1.4 million seniors in New York City, and your district has the largest senior population. And then that number is expected to increase to about 1.8 million by 2030. So what needs to be done to make sure that the senior population gets proper access to everything from health care to the subways?
A couple of weeks ago, my office held a senior resource fair at the Lenox Hill Neighborhood House. We've held it every year since I've been in office, and we partner with AARP and city organizations to help senior citizens know their rights when it comes to affordable housing. And in our community office, we've hosted a fall prevention forum as well as a memory seminar, and twice a month we host a free pro bono housing legal clinic for seniors. Last year we held a press conference on scams. What I'm hearing from the constituents that are walking into the office and calling the office is they're constantly being harassed by their landlord, number one, but number two, they're getting phone calls from people that are impersonating the IRS. And we recently had a woman, 100 years old, come into our office, and somebody said, go out and buy a gift card and send it to us. And she was frightened and really scared. So we're partnering with the 19th Precinct to host a crime prevention forum in early December, targeted for senior citizens. As the chair of the Consumer Fraud Committee in the New York State Legislature, one of the things that I'm looking at and holding a hearing on is what are the crimes that are targeting senior citizens, because they are constantly the victim of harassing landlords and phone calls to their apartments asking for money.
Mr. Puliafito, I know you mentioned your mother before, and so you have...
My mother-in-law,
yes.
yeah.
So you know about the senior population?
I'm almost there. Basically, it's a whole ball of wax here, is that how do we keep their quality of life? Everything's going up. Housing, as you said, and my mother-in-law are getting harassed to get out. How are they going to get the food on the table? It's various things together. We have to fight for the housing. We have to fight for Social Security. How do we get the Social Security? Health care. How are we going to give them health care? Because you know what? Maybe the federal government's going to take it away. Maybe they're going to take away Medicare from people, lessen it. We have to stand up and fight and say, you know what? Health care, housing, food on the table for them. And more importantly, what I found out, not just with my mother-in-law, but I took care of my mother before she passed. She was 78 years old, and there was a lot of things involved. We have to help the people, the caregivers, that help the seniors, and also get the seniors out and get engaged more. Because one thing is that as you get older, you get shut in. And we need to help people to still get engaged. So it's a whole ball. It's not just one simple thing, and we need to go out and fight for this.
Okay, let's shift gears and move on to the environment. We'll stay with you, Mr. Puliafito. What are the three biggest concerns when it comes to the environment in your district, and how do you plan to tackle those issues?
Well, I think the first thing is the water quality out in Roosevelt Island. Because right now is that there's an issue about just in the playgrounds and the public spaces with the water fountains, that there's an issue there, and the RIOC is not coming forward with what's going on. So that's one issue that I think, if Rebecca wins, I think there's one thing you should take care of when you get to force them to say, hey, Mr. Cuomo and RIOC, come on, what's going on with the water quality over there? And then that tends to be, how about the housing there? Is the housing problem there? And talking about traffic is an issue, air quality is a problem, and when we go to congestion pricing, is it really going to work, or does it really solve the issue of getting more cars and more trucks out of the city, which in other cities it has not. All it does is generate money. So we have to come up with a better way, a better plan, besides congestion pricing, to lower the traffic in the neighborhoods. And of course, we got the trucks, sanitation trucks, coming to the Marine Transfer Terminal with all that congestion and smell and exhaust as well.
Assemblymember Seawright, we're going to get to you in a minute, but Mr. Puliafito, do you have a plan? You've mentioned things that you're interested in looking at, but do you have any plans? You're not for congestion pricing, so...
No, I do not. I think nobody has a plan. I think, I'm coming in as a man who can get things done, and I'm open-minded to say, how can we do this? We need alternative ways. We can't do business as usual. Now, you want to pin me on one thing? I can't give it to you now. If I'm in office, do a little more studying on this, I'll give you something, but congestion pricing doesn't work.
Assemblymember, congestion pricing, and also to answer my previous question about environmental concerns in your district.
Yes, thank you. So I'm very proud to have received a 100% rating from the League of Conservation Voters. And I was the lead sponsor on 2 pieces of legislation that passed the New York State Assembly. And one was to call on and require an asthma study for the entire borough of Manhattan in response to the waste transfer station on East 91st Street. And the second, which I passed this past legislative session and was the lead sponsor, was to call for air quality testing for every waste transfer station throughout the entire state of New York. And I feel very strongly with the waste transfer station opening next year on East 91st Street and the odor and the air quality drifting over to Roosevelt Island, that we need that baseline study of air quality testing. And so recently I called on the Department of Health, the State Department of Health, to our district office on York Avenue for a meeting to talk about what specifically they were doing. And they said to me they were in jeopardy of losing their federal funding from Washington for asthma study. And I said, how could this be? With a waste transfer station that has no business on East 91st Street, within 100 feet of public housing and public schools, how could this be? And so one of the things that I would like to advocate next legislative session is for additional resources for our State Department of Health, our State Environmental Protection Agency, to do air quality testing throughout the state of New York, and I'm very happy to have passed both of those pieces of legislation.
And your thoughts on congestion pricing?
I favor congestion pricing, but I'd like to see a well thought out plan. I'd like to bring all the stakeholders to the table. I don't feel that it's fair for Roosevelt Island residents to have to pay for a bridge surcharge to come into Manhattan. So I've yet to see a really comprehensive, well thought out plan for congestive pricing. I'm inclined to support it, but I want to read the exact details of the language.
Your district is right on the water. It's on the East River. And how or will you legislate for resiliency, to improve resiliency in your district? I mean, we're coming on to the anniversary. We just hit the anniversary of Superstorm Sandy, and with that in the back of our minds.
So I was pleased to obtain a $500,000 grant in the New York State budget to award to the Upper East Side Esplanade Task Force. We need to focus on reports on the rebuilding of the seawall behind Gracie Mansion. I will continue to advocate for additional funding in the New York State budget for our seawall on the Upper East Side. The Esplanade is really a jewel for the Upper East Side, but we need to maintain it. We need to advocate for additional dollars. In my first year in office in 2015, I passed legislation for the waterways, and I will continue to be a strong advocate.
Mr. Puliafito, I
Yes.
want to give you the chance to answer that same question about resiliency and the waste transfer station, and what your feelings are on that, what your position is on the waste transfer and resiliency.
Well, with the marine transfer station, I think that it was really a done deal before. They just wanted to push it on the Upper East Side. And what we need to do is to make sure the safety of the area, air quality of the area, and the environment. Are we waking people up? What's going on? And then, if there is an issue, we need the marine transfer station, Department of Sanitation, whatever, to resolve these issues, or we need to close the operation in 30 days. And finally, I think overall, we need to work towards zero waste in our communities and as well as in the city, because we really have to reduce the amount of that. And talking about other things, resiliency is fine, but we need to get back to housing, food on the table for people. People are getting kicked out of the house, and basically what you're going to have a more homeless population, and well, probably they live maybe on the FDR Drive. I don't know, but thank you.
Okay. Assemblymember Seawright, you wanted to respond?
Mr. Puliafito addressed the waste transfer station and said we should call for closing it in 30 days after it opens. But I advocate for not opening it at all. When the transfer station caught on fire, I rushed to the site and I toured it to see the cause of the fire. And then a few months later, I went and toured the waste transfer station. It has no business on the Upper East Side, within so many feet of a public housing facility and within so many miles of a public school. So I advocate not opening the transfer station at all. This came in under a Republican administration before I took office. One of the reasons that I was motivated to run for office is because as a PTA mom and a school activist and a mother of 2 kids that went through the public schools, my kids played on the ball fields of asphalt green on that soccer field, and I've seen firsthand the dangers of this transfer station opening on the Upper East Side. So I advocate that it should not open at all.
Let's move on to the MTA. Your district has the Q line now. It runs along 2nd Avenue. Is it meeting the needs of the public? And if not, what else needs to be done to meet the needs of your district when it comes to the MTA? And we will stay with you on this, Ms. Seawright.
Well, that's a very important question, and we're going to debate in January in the legislative session a $19 billion request for capital construction for the MTA. I sought to be appointed to the Corporations and Authorities Committee in the New York State Assembly, which has oversight of not only the MTA but the Port Authority. And what I am hearing is my senior citizens, they rely on that M31 bus to get to their doctor's appointments, and it's totally disgraceful and unacceptable that we do not have subways and buses that are on time, that are clean, and that are up to date. New York is far behind when it comes to our subway system and our bus. So I would advocate for more additional dollars in the state budget, but more importantly, for a monthly report posted online and made accessible to the public of the progress for the Fast Forward New York plan for New York State.
Okay, before we go to you, Mr. Puliafito, let's stay with you, Assemblymember Seawright, and talk about Roosevelt Island and the lack of good public transportation for people on Roosevelt Island. How can you improve the MTA situation for people living there?
So I recently went down into the basement of the F train on Roosevelt Island to look at a water leak, and my chief of staff lives on Roosevelt Island, and what we need to do is insist upon a report on the progress that the MTA is making on our subway systems. Something that my office has taken very seriously and is working on is the ferry that was launched recently. We co-hosted a meeting, a town hall forum on Roosevelt Island about a year ago for the launch of the ferry system. And one thing that my office is calling on is we need a free transfer from the ferry to the MTA. And that the ferry system is run by New York City and the Hornblowers Corporation, and it's just outrageous that we don't have a free transfer to the subway and to the MTA, to the bus. And so that's something that I feel very strongly that we need to work on. There needs to be a free transfer from the ferry to the MTA.
Mr. Puliafito?
Oh, mostly what Rebecca said is correct. But the one thing is, I don't agree with giving the MTA more money. Because as you know, the MTA has no accountability to anyone. All right, they're a government inside the government. So why are we going to throw money? Even if we say, okay, put the report online, what is it for us to stop them from continuing their practices? We need to change the culture in the MTA. We need to see who we place on the board in the MTA, because money does not solve everything.
Does this mean that you are against the Fast Forward plan?
I think we need to really take a close look at it and see what the buy-ins from everybody who's going to do the work on it to see how do we be on time. Because as you know, it was $3.5 billion for a mile for the Q line. So that's astronomical. How are we going to do a better job of keeping costs, hold on to that. And then we'll give the money. But other than that, right now, MTA can say, okay, here it is, too bad for you, we're doing what we want.
Assemblymember?
So the MTA and the subway system has been deteriorating for decades. And so what I think that we need is a dedicated revenue stream in the state budget for capital construction of the MTA so that we can bring it up to date and compete internationally with London and Paris and other subway systems. It's totally unacceptable that the subway is not on time and not clean and is completely and totally out of date. So I would advocate for a dedicated revenue stream for capital construction in the state budget.
And again, money's not going to solve the issue.
I'd like to move on because we have a few more topics that we'd like to get to, and one of them is small businesses, which is big on the Upper East Side. And the mayor earlier this year advocated for a vacancy tax that would penalize landlords who leave their storefronts vacant for a long period of time. So, Mr. Puliafito, would you support this, and how do you suggest Albany address New York's retail blight?
Well, first thing is that, yes, the mom and pop stores are the community. Growing up, everybody met at certain places. The store owners knew you. So first thing is a good step is for the vacancy rate. Yes, maybe we should do it within 3 months. Try to do something to the landlords for de-incentives. Excuse me, I can't say that word. But basically, to make them rent the stores, not to keep them vacant, because all the store owners I spoke to is that landlords do not want to rent their stores because they're looking for the big box to come in and pay that rent. And then what people don't realize is when you go to a big box, you're sending money out of the community. And doing that is a good first step. And basically the economic development that we have in the state, we should move away from corporations and focus on small businesses. Let's help small business because they are the community and not big business. As you see, Madison Square Garden, they pay 0 in property taxes.
Just quickly, do you support changes or cuts to the commercial rent tax?
Yes, yes.
Assemblymember?
I absolutely support changes and cuts to the commercial rent tax. And, the mom and pop stores and the businesses on the Upper East Side and Roosevelt Island, they're the bread and butter of our community. And we need to do all we can to support our local businesses. With the construction of the 2nd Avenue subway, a lot of the local businesses suffered. And one of the things that I advocated for in Albany was grant money to help give relief to our small businesses so that we could keep them in operation. And in the district office recently, my staff and I met with Target Incorporated from Minnesota. They flew in because they're opening a giant megastore on 70th Street and 3rd Avenue. And one of the things that I said to Target was, what are you giving back to the community? And did you realize there's a post office and there's a Lenox Hill neighborhood settlement house on 70th Street? So you're going to have all these big trucks unloading boxes, and I think what we need are more mom and pop stores on the Upper East Side, and we need to show that support. I'm a strong advocate of women and minority-owned certified businesses. The governor has set a high bar at 30%, and I want to do all I can to encourage our small businesses on the Upper East Side and Roosevelt Island. On Roosevelt Island, the commercial space is controlled by Related, and when I talk to residents about what they're needing, recently I attended the ribbon cutting for the local diner on Roosevelt Island, and what they're wanting are local services and commercial spaces filled on the island, and that's what I'm going to advocate for.
Just quickly, where are you on the vacancy tax?
I support it.
Okay, let's move on to NYCHA, the New York City Housing Authority. We all know about the issues with NYCHA housing, so I want to find out the last time you were in a NYCHA apartment, and how would you work to improve conditions of the people living in public housing? Assemblymember Seawright?
So I have one NYCHA unit. It's the Robbins Plaza in my legislative district on 70th and 1st Avenue. I was there about 2 weeks ago, and I have advocated for Robbins Plaza. We work very closely with the tenant leader, Lavelle Watts. It's located right next to the Lenox Hill Neighborhood House and the Senior Citizen Center, and I was proud to get $1 million in grant money 2 years ago, we had over 100 refrigerators and stoves delivered to that unit. We sponsored a senior fair right next door to it, and a woman came up to me and personally thanked me for that stove that she received right before Thanksgiving. So I'm going to continue to support the NYCHA Housing Robbins Plaza in my district and fight for them to get more grant money. We sponsored computer classes and security cameras that we paid for with that grant money.
Mr. Puliafito, when was the last time you were in a NYCHA apartment, and what would you do?
I don't remember when, but I do realize that people are living in squalor there. Maybe not so much on the Upper East Side, but others. And it appalls me that an agency can so overlook. We got the heating system coming up, right? Is there going to be heat in NYCHA this year? And the toxic lead paint that it's in here. How do we get so out of I just don't understand, and we need better leadership. We need to roll up our sleeves and say, let's get things done here. Do we have to remove the red tape? How do we go in and repair everything that needs to be repaired? It's great to have a mayor that's interested in other parts of the country, but you know what? Take care of the walls that are in NYCHA. Let's take care of the people, the children that live there. I mean, soon they're going to close one. Sooner or later, it's going to be so dilapidated, they're going to start closing NYCHA buildings, and where are these people going? I mean, there's more to this than just getting dressed. We need to fight. We need to say, let's get this work done. Let's get rid of the red tape. We need to repair.
Lou Puliafito, let's stay with you for closing statements.
Okay, thank you. First, thank you for having me here and to everyone involved to setting this up. And also, I'd like to thank God for this opportunity to give me to go down this path. And also, why I'm here is because I want to leave the state and the city better than when I came here. All our children deserve better. And what's happening is no. Everybody's falling behind except for a few. And the other thing is I want to tell people, hey, I'm here. I'm an avid citizen. You could do this too. We need to take our government back. And I want to be an example. Even if I don't win, hopefully I'll win, but if not, it'll inspire you to come on, be civically active in the community. And finally, we need to end corruption, stop the developers. If you want to send a warning shot to Albany and City Hall, you vote for me. If you want business as usual, and yes, she's doing a great job, I'm not saying that, but we're not getting to where we need to be. Thank you.
Assemblymember Rebecca Seawright, your closing statement.
Well, I want to thank Manhattan Neighborhood Network and the League of Women Voters and all of the partners for co-sponsoring this Candidates Forum today. And it's been an honor and a privilege to represent the Upper East Side and Roosevelt Island in the New York State Assembly. I was recruited to run for this office by the National Organization for Women. A woman had never held this seat before. We've passed over 27 bills since I've been elected, including the ERA, the 3D mammogram, a small business insurance bill, and we will continue to pass good legislation. But first and foremost, I am focused on 3 goals, and that is fighting for the state resources in the state budget to bring back to the district, 1. Number 2, maintaining a storefront office right next to the post office on York Avenue and 79th Street. And I invite all people to come in, speak to us about your problems and how we can help. And number 3, going forward in Albany, fighting for the values that we as Democrats hold so dear, and in this national climate, fighting for the issues that we need to protect in response to what's coming out of Washington. And I ask for your vote today, and thank you very much.
Thank you for watching. Please remember to vote. The general election is Tuesday, November 6th. For more information on voting, on locating your polling site, and all the candidates, you can visit our website, racetorepresent.com, or the League of Women Voters website, lwvny.org. Thank you for watching Race to Represent on Manhattan Neighborhood Network.